Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we're going to answer a letter from somebody who is worried about growing in separate directions. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
Correct. We are not professionals. We are not trained in any of this. So please take our advice as you see fit in your life. We are only here to offer our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. All right, so because it is a Monday at the beginning of the week, we are going to do a check-in topic, and I've been looking forward to this one ever since I saw it in meme form on the internet. It said, what advice do you have for people out there dating your ex? And I immediately screenshot it and sent it to Sam and was like, we're doing this. I thought it was clever because, like, you know, I think the superficial thing is like, run, don't do it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, here at Just Break Up, we want to dive in a little bit deeper. And I think it's real. Like,
do we?
I mean, skim the surface, you know, shave.
Mine was like,
surface.
Just as a warning, he's a liar.
I just felt like, you know, get what is the actual advice, you know? Mm-hmm. So yeah, yours is.
Don't believe a fucking word he says.
That's funny because my first thing is believe his actions, not his words or song lyrics.
That's funny.
Yeah. I was also thinking for like a later ex, or I should say earlier ex, you know, her to the person dating her, I would say her discomfort or her suffering doesn't justify her cruelty or her criticism, you know? Mm-hmm. I thought that they went hand in hand and that they were because of one another, and maybe they are, but there's still no justification for being mean or controlling in a relationship, no matter how hard her life has been, or no matter how hard she's struggling in this moment, or, you know, how uncomfortable she is by whatever situation. Yeah, I would say that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that his self-confidence, or his like external self-confidence, is a mask for a deep-seated lack of self-awareness and self-understanding. And that...
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say like self-love, and you were like self-awareness.
Yeah,
like this bitch doesn't even know himself.
No, absolutely not. And that you can for sure have empathy for that. But also that like that's his work to do, to find that sense of self and that sense of love for himself. That's not just narcissism.
Yeah, totally. I had fun trying to think of advice, or I didn't have to try that hard, but thinking of advice for like an ex of mine that I still really respect and admire.
Yes.
And the one piece of advice I settled on is, you know, to the new partner, your way of doing things is okay. Sure. That it doesn't just have, you know, that particular ex saw like a right way and a wrong way. And I think because he was a great caretaker and a great person, and he just was generally more stable and secure and providing than I was, I often sort of deferred to his way of doing things, and that a lot of tension grew there because, you know, it's okay to have your own way of doing things. It really is. Even if all of the good intentions are there, you know, you can still do it your way.
Yep. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like another, also in the same line of like an ex that I still really like or like really wish the best for. And yeah, I think the thing that I would, if he were dating someone else, I would say that like he has a lot of, he has some ideas about what intimacy should look like and how quickly it should be progressing. And so be effusive with your desire for him and his like, what are you laughing at?
I'm sorry. I was drinking a smoothie and then I realized who you're talking about. This is the person that was like, we haven't said I love you yet. Like, we're not moving fast enough, right?
Yeah.
And then he broke up with you. That's why I'm
exactly
sorry.
right.
I was drinking, and then I started to spit my drink out when I realized, because you were like, he has an idea about
How
like,
things are going. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really like,
I'm sorry.
So be more outward with your affection. Like, he's going to need somebody who is going to be able to like show
that's
affection
very constructive.
more often than I certainly was, because he thought that I didn't care for him when I clearly did because of my actions and not because of how I actually felt.
That is actually like the one constructive piece of advice that we've given so far. That towards the love, like, blossoming or whatever.
Oh, I hope that he finds love. He deserves it.
Yeah. You know what this exercise did was make me realize how glad I'm not dating any of these people anymore.
Yeah. No, that's really real.
You know how glad I am that I'm not.
Yeah.
No, none of them did I look back and think like, take care of them. They're just so deserving. I mean, of course they are. They really, I do believe that. But like, I didn't look back and think like, oh, well, be good with his tender, sensitive, creative songwriting heart, Instead, I was like, the fact that he doesn't ask about you but talks about himself a ton is a red flag.
Yeah, it's really about like, how do you take care of yourself in this relationship? Yeah, absolutely. That boyfriend he said he broke up with in New York, he didn't break up with him.
Yeah. That one, he drinks way too fast. That's not normal. Not normal to drink a beer so fast. This is way more fun. It's way more fun to be petty. Yeah. And then what would the people say to our spouses? Like, that's the real trick. It's like,
God.
What would our exes say to our current spouses? Run?
Yeah, no, honestly. Yes. That person is literally losing their mind, and you are unsafe with them.
Okay, well, fine. Yeah, no, I agree.
Or maybe like, don't cheat on them because they can't handle it very well.
Or no. In my case, it would be like, she's cheating on you.
Also,
like me, which I'm not, and I won't ever again. Anyway, okay, that was fun. Let's get into today's letter.
Let's do it. All right, so this letter comes from Beatrice Anonymous, whose pronouns are she, her, and they, them, who is writing to us from Massachusetts. Hi, Sam, Sierra, and Spencer. JBU means so much to me. Endless love to all three of you. I, 21-year-old she, they, am partnered with Simon, 22-year-old he, they. Simon is everything I could ever imagine for a partner. They're smart and funny and sweet and gentle and very attractive. We've been dating for 4 years and have seen each other grow through a lot. The pandemic, losses, mental and physical illness, and the highs and lows of college. We've really grown together. We've been long distance the whole time, which has been challenging, but ultimately makes us stronger. We love each other so, so much. However, I am polyamorous and Simon is not. Being monogamous is possible for me, but it's definitely not my preference. Simon, on the other hand, would prefer to be monogamous, but is willing to be in an open relationship. Being open allows us both to have flirtatious and physical relationships with other people. I would be happy if the relationship was even more open, but that is not something with which Simon is comfortable. So we both compromise to keep our relationship. Simon and I are both worried that at some point this could become a point of tension, resentment, and incompatibility. Simon would be happy marrying me now and never sleeping with anyone else ever again. I initially thought my polyamory was a phase, but I'm beginning to think it's a forever part of my identity. I'm still so young, so I don't know. I do know that I absolutely adore Simon and would do anything for them. We really don't want to break up. How do we contend with the fact that we're compatible now, but could grow in separate directions?
All right, my darling. Thank you so much for writing and trusting us with this letter. I think it's a great question to ask of ourselves in any situation. How do we grow together, and we, at the risk of growing apart, how do we love and despite that? And how do we talk about incompatibilities and do it transparently and with respect and hope for the future, as teammates. I think it's totally possible, and we're going to get into a couple ways, but first we have to take a very, very quick break.
All right, welcome back. I really appreciate this letter because I feel kindred with you in this kind of like worrying about the what ifs, right? Like the idea of like, well, things are good now, but what happens when the other shoe drops? Or we're compatible in this moment, but what happens if I meet somebody and I really want to be with them and I want to be in a polyamory, right? Like all of these sort of what ifs. And I think part of what can be helpful about this is really kind of thinking about it in a really sort of like honest and practical way. So, right, like we can go through a whole list of like what ifs and like really just like overwhelm ourselves with all of those different things. And that's probably not super helpful, right? Because like not every what if is going to come true. Not every what if is probable. Like not every what if is something that we need to plan for. But I do think that as you and Simon are figuring out like what your relationship currently looks like and kind of talking continuously as things go forward, it's probably good to prepare for some things that are probably going to happen, right? Like that are kind of likely to really think about, right? Knowing the fact that you are somebody who is polyamorous and he is somebody who prefers monogamy, there are probably going to be moments where things butt heads, right? In lots of different ways. You know what I mean? It's like this is incompatibility, but it's not like the biggest incompatibility, right? Like in the same way that, you know, if one of you is like really focused on your career and like is wanting to move somewhere else and the other person or the other people are not into that and want to stay where they're at, right? Like that's an incompatibility that we're going to have to talk about, right? And prepare for. If I get a job in Seattle, are you going to move with me? Are we going to do long distance, right? Like, or is that going to be something that breaks us up, right? Like having some of these conversations around like not necessarily planning for like every what if, but for some big what ifs that are kind of likely is helpful, not just in the way that it can help prepare us for things that's like that could and would likely happen, but also because like developing that muscle, getting into that practice of having those types of conversations makes it easier for us when we're in the moment and there's a big clash happening and people are feeling all sorts of different things to be able to like go back to those muscles and say like, okay, well, we've talked about this before. We have practice getting uncomfortable in talking about this kind of stuff. So like, let's go back there. We've done this before. We've got it. Like, let's go for it. Let's use those tools now in this moment of crisis that we've been developing in times when things were really good.
That's the key for me right there, because I do believe that navigating conflict is a skill that we develop. It's a muscle that we grow, and it is unique to each relationship because it's unique to the people and the personalities and the baggage that come to those partnerships. And what Sam is saying here is so on point. The idea that, you know, this isn't a doom sentence for your relationship, and this isn't a incompatibility that's right in front of your faces happening right now. Like you're happy right now. You are sustaining right now. But as you said in the letter, like this is an incompatibility that could affect you long term, that could affect the choices that you make, the shared vision that you have for your relationship. So yeah, how are you practicing now talking about, well, what are our options? What would it look like if we did this route? What would it look like if we did this route? How would it feel? How would we sustain it? How would we nurture ourselves on this path versus this path? This is wildly not the same, but about every 3 months, my wife and I talk about taking my daughter out of daycare because it's ungodly expensive. And it's just like, you know, I don't make a ton of money as a creative person, but we put her in daycare because we need the free time. I need to work and it's good for her and yada yada. But like every 3 months we're like, oh my God, this daycare bill, are you kidding me? And we go back and forth and we say, all right, what would it look like if we took her out of daycare? How would Sierra mommy manage her workload? You know, how would mommy get alone time away from that child? You know, how would we do X, Y, and Z? What would this look like? What would it look like if we stayed there? And we constantly have these conversations every 3 months or so. Like every time we're like, oh God, we'd love to have that daycare money. And you know what we love about it is that even though we're always having this conversation or we're returning to it on this sort of cyclical basis, because it does feel like a little bit of an unknown or something in our relationship, after we have the conversation, we feel more committed to our decision to keep her in daycare for the time being, right? It's like we have the conversation about taking her out so that we can decide more consciously, more intentionally to keep her in, right? And and then when we have the conversation, we remember why it's worth it, why the money, the steep daycare bill is worth it, because of all of these reasons. And I feel like your relationship's not daycare bill. It's not a daycare bill, but I feel like the same thing could happen, especially since you have this, good, true, long-lasting relationship, especially at your age. If you continue to have this conversation, every couple months or so, or every 6 months or whatever, schedule a check-in, a biannual check-in, and you practice sitting in the discomfort of the unknown and sitting in the discomfort that, yes, this is an incompatibility, but all relationships have opportunity costs. All relationships function with some incompatibility. Like that's the other thing I want to bring up in this conversation, is that word isn't a death sentence for your love. Willow and I are incompatible in certain ways because she's way more of a morning person than I am. I mean, not really at this point. The baby sort of forces you to be a morning person.
Sure.
But incompatibilities aren't just the big capital I incompatibilities, like I want children and they don't, or I want to live in Alaska and they want to live in Florida. There's smaller incompatibilities, like you're a vegetarian and they're a meat eater, Mm-hmm. You like to binge your TV shows. They like to watch them one at a time, Sure. And how do you find each other in the middle of that? And I know polyamory and monogamy, it's somewhere in the middle. It's not, no, it is as big or as important as it is to you.
Sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. But it's not as trivial as how you're going to watch Netflix.
Right.
But I know that you can talk about it in a way that explores the edges of it, explores the potential of the conflict, explores the potential of the sacrifice either of you would and could make for one another, and that's the right word, and explores, what are the parameters that you're not comfortable with, I know this isn't like a tangible, like it's going to be okay, or you are going to be together forever, or you should just be monogamous, or you should just be polyamorous, because we can't, nor would we ever say that. But we do really believe in your ability to talk about it, and how that exploring, as uncomfortable as it may be in the beginning, is a huge well of strength and knowledge and practice for you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the idea of sort of radical acceptance, right? Where we're like, we are choosing to do this. We are choosing to be in this relationship with each other.
Choosing to keep her in daycare.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, absolutely. Right. We're choosing to be in this relationship despite our differing sort of understandings of what our ideal relationship would look like, right? We are choosing to practice maybe like a semi-open, semi-closed situation, right? There's lots of different ways that we can choose, but you are actors with choices in this situation. I want to empower you to feel like that is something that's available to you, because that's really how it is. And And what I will say is that, like, Sierra and I are talking about the importance of really having these conversations, sort of preparing for things that are probably going to happen, thinking about, like, are we still good, or do we need to shift? Does something need to change? I will say that, like, that is not going to prevent bad things from happening, right? Like, there is a world in which you two do grow separately in a way where you are no longer compatible in this relationship. Like, that happens in relationships all the time.
Right.
Right. So I don't want to say, like, this will prevent you from, breaking up or getting to a point where you can't be together. But I do think that, like, having this level of trust and respect for each other makes that discernment around whether or not this relationship is working for both of you much easier than if you were both not talking about it and unhappy with how it's going, right? Like, that's how resentments continue to build. That's how, things become sort of toxic. But doing this type of work can help do that. Is it possible that you'll still break up in, like, a big cloud of toxicity? Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's true for all of us, 100%.
Yep. Yeah.
But again, it's about, like, how do we prepare for and accept the fact that we are on two different paths because we're two different people in the same relationship, but having two different experiences of that relationship.
Right.
And that we are gonna move towards and away from each other in lots of different ways. But if we continue to commit to seeing each other as full humans with lots of richness of our own experiences, and the idea that we may grow closer, we may go apart, but that's okay because we're both humans who respect and appreciate each other, becomes easier to make those decisions about whether or not the relationship is actually working for us. And if we need to part ways because it's not anymore, or if we need to recommit because it's working really well for both of us.
Yes. Yeah. And listen, that's difficult for all of us. None of us want to enter in such a vulnerable partnership that is the unknown, right? Like none of us sign up to be like, oh my God, I'm going to love you, even though at any given moment, the universe could take you from me, or that we could grow apart from each other, or that something so unknown could happen, or so unforeseen. That's hard for all of us to truly, truly sit in. But that is the vulnerability of loving. And that is, like, our life's mission, is showing up for that. Not to say that you're meant to be together, but that your heart is meant to risk like this, to not risk even, but to be open to the unknown, because it's never known. Even the things we think that are, like, so sure or concrete or given, they're never guaranteed ever.
For sure.
So this is a part of not just loving, but of being human. Mm-hmm. So, my darling, I hope that this helps. And truly, genuinely, good luck on these conversations. I believe that you can have them, and I believe that they will be beneficial to you, and hopefully beneficial to your relationship.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for writing. We love you.
We love you so much.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like ad-free episodes, you can always support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to all of our episodes without ads. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing, all magical things by Spencer Worth Davis, aka Big Cats. Make sure to check out his podcast and music. And remember, we never know what is promised to us, what is guaranteed. We can only communicate what we know to be true right now. And we can take that communication and come into new understanding. At any given moment, we can gain new clarity. And if all else fails,
just break up.